Okay. Welcome to each and everyone this evening. We are very thankful that you can make it to this forum. I'm going to have a short prayer before we get started. God in heaven, we thank you once again for the living. We ask your blessing on this forum. We ask your blessing on every panelist or visitors that are viewing and are listening from near and far. We ask your blessing on the medium, Zoom and the YouTube channels, that there will be no disruption or interruption, and that we will receive practical information this evening is our prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. On behalf of our pastor, Holmes, our elders board, our church board, and our members at large, I'd like to welcome you to Atlanta Pillars of Faith Seventh-day Adventist Church, Truth Talk 832. And that 832 stands for John 8:32. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. At this time, I would like to introduce our panelists. My name is Selby Cordner. I'll be your host. First, I will introduce you to Dr. Ugonna Woods. Ugonna Woods is a pediatrician in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you. She has been practicing for the past 15 years at a local community hospital and clinic. She loves her career and considers it a privilege to serve her patients and show them God's love. In her free time, she spends it in her country home with her 3 boys, and they love to be involved in church youth groups. She loves hiking, she loves cooking, she loves to travel the world on various mission trips. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Woods. Next, I'll go and introduce you to Dr. Magna Parks Porterfield. She's a psychologist. She received her PhD in counseling psychology from Ohio State University. She's a licensed psychologist in both states of Georgia and Alabama, and also has a diploma in nutritional counseling. Dr. Parks Porterfield taught on the college level for 7 years, University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and Oakwood University in Alabama. She was also in private practice for 13 years in Atlanta, Georgia. In 2007, she made a decision to leave her formal practice to start a health education ministry that focuses on mental, physical, and spiritual health. Dr. Parks Porterfield is currently married to Ron Porterfield, a lifestyle consultant and coach. Formerly worked as a staff member at UG Pines Institute in Alabama. Both Dr. Parks and her Porterfield and her husband have conducted various seminars in the United States and overseas. They have also been blessed with several opportunities to speak on both 3ABN television and radio. The Porterfields have a particular interest in helping others achieve health based on principles from the Bible, science, and inspired writings. Dr. Parks Porterfield is also a renowned author. She has written several books. The most recent is entitled Keys to Optimal Mental Health. She also continues offering mental health counseling and coaching. Welcome, Dr. Parks Porterfield. Welcome. Next, we will introduce Dr. Columbus Batiste. He's a board-certified interventional cardiologist and assistant clinical professor at the University of California, Riverside School of Medicine. Since 2008, he has served as chief of cardiology. Over the years, Dr. Batiste has been recognized for his work by multiple organizations. In 2010, Dr. Batiste sought to break the cycle of prescriptions and procedures as the sole management of chronic disease and began promoting a long-term solution for his patients through nutrition, stress reduction, and exercise. In 2011, Dr. Batiste led out in establishing the integrative cardiovascular disease, which seeks to prevent the reoccurrence of cardiac events through lifestyle modification. Dr. Batiste's mission is each one can teach one about the benefits of plant-based nutrition, daily exercise, and stress reduction. This mission has led the formation of a nonprofit organization which is called Healthy Heart Nation, which provides education through lectures, newsletters, social and digital media. Welcome, Dr. Batiste. Next, we have Dr. Napol. Dr. Napol is a dentist. He obtained his Bachelor's of Arts in Biochemistry from Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas City, and Doctor of Dental Surgery degree from Howard University in Washington, D.C. Dr. Napol completed a residency in general practice and oral medicine at Truman Medical Center in Kansas City, Missouri. He then went on to serve 3 years in the United States Navy and eventually earned a fellowship from the Academy of General Dentistry, a general practice residency at Truman Medical Center, the AEGD postgraduate program while on active duty with the United States Navy. His membership includes the American Academy Cosmetic Dentistry, the American Academy of General Dentistry, the Association of Military Surgeons of the United States, and the United States Air Force. Dr. Napol is committed to helping you maintain healthy, great-looking teeth and gums with the latest cosmetic dentistry procedures, as well as delivering a personal and comforting approach. All right, then we have Dr. Eric Walsh. Eric Walsh was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He's a graduate of the University of Miami School of Medicine, Loma Linda University School of Public Health, where he received his master's and doctorate in public health. His most important education experience was his time at Oakwood University in Alabama. He has served 2 US presidents, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, as an advisor on HIV/AIDS. Dr. Walsh has served at several churches, also as an associate pastor. He's now a practicing physician and healthcare administrator. Currently, he is the medical director for the 18 Go Health Urgent Care in Connecticut through Hartford Healthcare. He travels the globe speaking on many subjects. Most importantly, he seeks to serve the Lord through the preaching and healing ministry. Let me say once again, welcome to our distinguished panelists, and welcome to our viewers and our listeners. We go from my left, and we'll each give a brief opening remark. We start with Dr. Batiste, and then we go to Dr. Napol, and so forth.
All right, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, we're facing very challenging times in our world, and it's nothing that's new to us as African Americans and those of African descent. We've been faced with many challenges in regards to health for really centuries now. And I think that in every opportunity, every situation, there's a chance and opportunity to really shine a light on making a difference. And so I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to add to the conversation any way I can, so we can make a difference in the lives of people who may be listening right now, because there are things that we can do that can change the course of our development of these diseases. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Batiste. Dr. Napol?
I'm very glad to be here. It's actually the first time for me being on Zoom and conference.
Speak up a little louder for us, Doc.
It's actually the very first time for me to be on Zoom, and also to be on such a heavy, high-powered group of professionals. And I think it's really very good in bringing something like this to the patient.
Yes.
And to help educate our patients and find some solutions in order to improve the lives of our people.
Thank you, Doc. Dr. Magna Porterfield.
Yes, it's a blessing to be able to be here with this group. I consider it an honor to be asked to do this. And I think that it's important to look at the mental health impact of this. We talk a lot about the physical health, but we're going to see as time goes on, not only the mental health currently, but the impact as we even possibly leave this coronavirus situation. And I think that all of us needs to be aware of this, and not only professionals, but in the mental health field, but even professionals in other fields. They will be encountering patients with these issues, and knowing how to support them and give them hope and give them encouragement is going to be important for everyone, not just mental health professionals. So I hope to be able to share with the listening audience things that they can do to help themselves in this area.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Walsh.
Hello, everybody. It was good being with you all this morning. So good to be back with you. I would say my takeaways, a little bit I touched in the sermon this morning, are two things. One of them is that this virus is not a random destroyer of lives or causer of disease, but in fact, this virus is good at finding the fracture lines in society where health disparities already existed, where disease was already in process, and is an accelerator of that disease. So one is physical, and we talked about that this morning, and we know that the virus does that. But the second was just alluded to. Coming out of this, one of the biggest problems that's going to come out of this is going to be a societal mass post-traumatic stress kind of situation. People are going to be afraid of people for a while. If you look back at the Spanish flu of 1918, it wasn't until 1922. It took 4 years before people were comfortable going back to theaters or churches. So we're facing some unique times. It's going to be a challenge for the church. But it's also going to be a great opportunity for the church if we can meet people around our health message for physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Woods.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with this panel. And I think for a pediatrician, it's so important to instill in parents and help educate parents about the importance of teaching their children healthy habits, because the children are our future. And so I just consider it my job and privilege to help parents know what are the best things they can do for their children. And I think the Bible has given us so many good tips on how to raise our children, and eating habits and things, even exercise habits that we can do to help foster a long life. And so that's what I'll be focusing on this afternoon.
Thank you so much. All right, well, we're gonna dive right into these questions. I know Dr. Woods have to leave us shortly, so we're gonna direct the first question to Dr. Woods. And this question, what advice can you give for coping? Dr. Woods, I tell you what, let me go back there. Let me go back. Let me go to Dr. Batiste. Sorry about that. Dr. Batiste, what is the relationship between COVID-19 and heart disease?
Well, what we've been able to observe is we've observed a distinct relationship between individuals who have elevated blood pressure, which is seen as a cardiovascular ailment, individuals who suffer with heart attack, who have heart failure, individuals who've had strokes, that there seems to be an increased propensity towards disease infecting those individuals, as well as them dying sicker and sooner than others, is what we distinctly have found. Now, some of that pertains to certain receptors, the ACE receptors that have been found that are located in the lungs and located in the periphery too as well, that seem to be a mechanistic effect of how the virus attaches and attacks. And so we know that individuals who have chronic disease are tremendously compromised in general. And this virus is really just displaying that on full view right now.
Okay. So what are some of the foods you would recommend that they can consume that will be able to aid in our heart health?
Well, the thing about heart health is the same as cancer prevention. It's the same as diabetes prevention. And there's a lot of congruity in terms of the things that we know to be beneficial. And so when we look at the message from the Bible and we look at the tools that come from individuals, we know that there are several aspects that can aid the body in recovering. So we know when we look at things like our fruits, and we look at the antioxidant power of our berries. Right. So when we look at fruits and we see the fruit that actually, when you peel a banana, what happens? It turns brown after a while. When you cut an apple, it turns brown after a while. That's oxidation. But so berries don't really turn brown. They're rich in antioxidants, which help the heart, which help the vessels too as well, and have been shown to lower blood pressure. So our berries are very powerful. When we look at our dark green leafy vegetables, rich as far as in our cruciferous vegetables and our spinach and other things like that, we know they're rich in dietary nitrates. There's some suggestion even that these dietary nitrates are actually stored in the skin and they're activated when we're in sunlight. Hence, some of the benefits of sunlight, even beyond vitamin D, which can now activate the nitric oxide to turn to nitroglycerin and excuse me, nitric oxide, and lead to these dietary nitrates and nitric oxide lead to dilation of the vessels and helping to improve blood flow to the heart and lower blood pressure as well. So we know our green leafy vegetables are powerful. We know too as well that our beans, our legumes are extremely powerful because of the rich fiber and what we call resistant carbohydrates, which means that from a caloric standpoint, you don't have the elevation in calories that are there. And so that fiber now can help lower your cholesterol, which helps support the heart too as well. So we add in these tools and our seeds that give us the omegas, which are extremely powerful as well. So our fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds are really at the base foundation that we should make every attempt to ingest on a daily basis. And so that's how we can support our heart health from a food standpoint.
Thank you, doctor. Before we switch to one of the other doctors, I have one more question related to diet. And where would you place egg and meat around in this category of diet and the effect it would have on the body? Do they have the same effect, the same negative effect, same trajectory? What would you say concerning egg and meat in the diet for someone with heart problems? Or
So
even in general, even in general.
yeah, that's a great question. It's one that we commonly have asked to us on a regular basis. And so the first thing I like to say is the fact that we have different people at different points in their life. There are different points on their journey towards achieving the health benefits of nutrition, right? So I hate to discourage individuals who've made dramatic changes. Maybe they've given up pork and given up spare ribs and they've given up fried chicken and all, and they're at the level of they've given up even curry goat, right? And so they're at the level now of the egg yolk. And I hate to beat them up, but what we know is that there is a process. It's beyond just the fat. There's a process that triggers when we eat any animal products, and that includes eggs, the yolk too as well, that stimulates the carnitine, leads to trimethylamine. In other words, all those fancy terms is that it promotes atherosclerosis. It promotes the hardening of the vessels. It can promote kidney dysfunction, or what studies increasingly are showing. We know that there's relationships between our egg intake and prostate cancer and some of the other aspects, ailments in general. So what becomes important is, what am I eating for my health? Is this food health promoting or is it disease forming? People love to use this green light, red light. We played it as a kid, red light, green light, right? Yellow light. And so the issue is I virtually never drive through a yellow light. Now, maybe it's because I'm living Black in America. Maybe it's because I'm a little bit cautious. I don't drive through yellow lights. I drive through green lights. And so our green light foods are fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds where there's zero controversy. Even if you put egg yolk, or excuse me, egg whites into the yellow, which I put into the red, you still should not partake of it on any given day because of the facts of what it can lead to with you. So I advise folks, depending on their progression on this trajectory towards health promotion, to abstain from egg yolks, egg whites, if at all possible.
Thank you, doctor. Viewers and listeners, I hope you're taking notes. Our forum theme today is you shall live and not die. You shall live and not die. That was vital information. Okay, let me go to Dr. Woods. Dr. Woods, on the first question, what advice can you give for coping with a new baby during COVID-19, especially considering postpartum blues and the social distancing, such lack of family support and so forth?
Okay. All right. Thank you. So it's very important when you have a new baby that you have a lot of social support. And I know with the social distancing and the stay-at-home orders that it's difficult to have your family come over. A lot of times your parents would come and help you and family members. And so I think it's still okay to have one reliable person that can come and help you as you have a newborn, because it's very important. We always teach moms self-care. You have to take care of yourself so that you're able to take care of your baby and your other children. And so it's important that you have the support there, just as in a stance of keeping your mood healthy and getting enough rest. That's very vital as you are caring for your child. So I think it's important to at least pick one person that you can trust to come in to help you to take care of your child. As well as the people that live in the home with you, of course, can help you. But some tips that I always say is to sleep when the baby sleeps so that you can rest. A lot of times parents try to get things done, clean the house, cook and things like that while the baby's resting, but then it just really drains their energy because they're not resting themselves. And so that's the first tip, is to sleep when the baby sleeps. And then it's okay to leave dishes in the sink. It's okay if the house isn't as pristine as it always is, but it's important to really get your good sleep and then to eat appropriately. A lot of times we focus on feeding other people in the home and we don't eat adequate amounts of food. And so for moms, especially if they're breastfeeding, they have to drink about 10 to 12 cups of water every day just because they're producing milk and substance for this new baby. And so it's very important that they eat healthy. I recommend eating, the 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, drinking lots of good water, continue to take your prenatal vitamins as your body, whether you're breastfeeding or not, to take the prenatal vitamins for at least 6 weeks just to help your body recover from this new life. And then it's important, we have a lot of social media at our fingertips, so it's still important to keep in contact with your family members, FaceTiming them, video calling them, just so they can still be a part of your life and be a part of the new baby's life and not miss some important moments. And then also it's important to make sure that you're maintaining your relationship with God. So keep having your special prayer time and your devotion time, trying to make time to attend church, whether that's over YouTube or live stream, however it works for you, but still taking that personal time with the Lord just for devotion, and also to rejuvenate yourself and rejuvenate your soul, because a healthy mom, a healthy parent leads to a healthy baby and a healthy family.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Well, the ones that have a little more understanding, the younger children, we're getting news that they're terrified of what's going on.
Yes.
The news are getting them more terrified. So parents are wondering, well, how can they comfort them at the same time, keep them informed, that's something that's age appropriate, so they can understand without being scared at the same time.
Right. So while it is important as parents that we remain informed, it's not as important for our children to watch the news and for them to be informed from outside sources. I always advise parents not to let their kids watch the news, that the parents, if they feel like they need to watch some aspects of the news, and again, don't watch too much because it can cause a lot of anxiety and sadness just watching the normal news, but they can watch what they feel is appropriate for themselves and then translate that information to their children. But I don't think any children should be watching the news at this time because it's just too much information, and a lot of it's not good information that's child appropriate. And then I want to tie this in with another question that I was sent earlier about the stress in children. So when the parents get stressed and anxious, it can also transfer to your children. So it's important to remain calm, and although you don't know maybe sometimes what tomorrow will bring, to still have a calm demeanor. and do your best to provide for your children with the means that you have. But another question that was also asked was how do they recognize stress and anxiety in their children? And so sometimes you'll notice that the children will stop talking, they might start acting out. We see sometimes they start wetting the bed, things that they're older, they're potty trained, they weren't wetting the bed anymore, and now they're doing something like that. And that's how they can sometimes let parents know that something's going on with them. They can become more withdrawn. But basically just watch your children for any change in their normal activity. It's important that you still have family time together. Make sure you still go outside, either your front yard or backyard, and just get some good fresh air, exercise, take family walks, play games outside with your children. These are all ways that you can calm down your children and also calm yourself and help relieve some anxiety and stress at the same time.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Dr. Magna Porterfield.
Yes.
Is it okay to not feel okay during these times?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if you all remember the book. I don't know how long ago it was written by Dr. Byrne, I'm Okay, You're Okay. But I do think it's okay not to feel okay. It's unreasonable to think that during this time that there will not be people who won't feel okay. The acute response to this crisis is everyone initially had fears. Everyone was initially worried. Mm-hmm. The concern I have and what's going to be problematic is when this okay feeling continues forever. Initially, we're not going to feel okay, but we need to recognize this is normal. What can I do about this? What is it that I can do to take control of my situation where I am? I can't control the pandemic, but I can do things to control my particular surroundings. What can I do to take care of myself? What can I do to take care of my family? How can I feed myself mentally? How can I feed myself spiritually? So my point is, you don't want to just stay in this not okay place. You want to see what you can do to start feeling better. But at the same time, recognizing that it's okay not to feel okay. So I'm looking at the quantity of time, how long you stay in that, and what do you do with those not okay feelings? You want to do things to feel some control in your environment, and you want to recognize, even when we look through the Bible, there are many situations where our patriarchs and our disciples and even Jesus didn't feel okay. But what did they do with those feelings? They turned to their Father and they said, Lord, I'm not feeling okay. Maybe I'm not in those exact words. How can you help me? What is it, Lord, that you can do in my life to help me with this okayness that I'm experiencing? And God will help us. I believe that. So the bottom line is it's okay to feel not okay, but what do we do with those feelings afterwards?
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. Next question. I'm feeling it's better to die. Is that normal or abnormal?
Well, again, feelings happen. We all going to have some kind of feelings. I like to tell my clients as I do counseling, feelings are not reality. And that sounds very simple, but when you think about it, it's because I feel something doesn't mean that that's what I should do or that's reality. So I may feel like I want to die, but that doesn't mean that's something I need to carry out. Sometimes we make too many decisions based on feelings. And so you may want to stop and say, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling I want to die? Is it because I have no hope? Is it because I have nothing good in this life to live for? What can I do with those feelings? Now, with suicidal ideation, which is what we call this, a person may feel they want to die. When you have a plan, then we start to take things a little more seriously. If you not only feel like you want to die, but you have a plan, you need to reach out to somebody, whether it be a mental health professional, a crisis hotline, a friend, a pastor. So this feeling of dying, we want to look at it seriously if there's a plan. If not, talk to the Lord about it. Call a friend. Find someone who will encourage you and help you to realize there's some reasons, even though you're feeling this way, there's some reasons you need to live. There are people who love you. There's some good things in your life. Count your blessings. So helping someone to kind of navigate you through that. Don't just sit with that and ruminate on it. Find someone to talk to, pray to the Lord about it. And if you have a plan, please reach out to somebody because you don't want to carry out that plan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One more question before we go to Dr. Napol. How can parents help their children who are struggling with substance and suicidal reactions at this time? Substance abuse and suicidal reaction.
Yeah, this is a really, I'm not an expert so much in substance abuse work, but I have talked with parents who are dealing with children. And one of the things is children need to know that you love them. That's real important for children to be in an atmosphere where they're not feeling judged or not feeling loved, and an atmosphere where they can come and talk to you. Oftentimes what keeps addictions going is the secrecy of it. So you want to provide an environment and encourage your child, provide an environment where they can feel that they can come talk to you about anything that's going on in their lives. If they don't feel they have that environment, they are going to seek other sources of help and support, which may not be the best. So provide an environment where they feel comfortable talking. Talk to them about their substance abuse. Seek help if they need help, because sometimes the parents are not the best person to help. They need professional help. So, but all of this is important for that child to feel supported, to feel loved, and to feel that you are there for them. And set some firm but strict guidelines about what you're going to allow in the home, what you're not, but do it in a loving way. That's going to be very important if you're dealing with a child. And again, if they need outside help, please seek outside help, and don't think that you have to carry this on and deal with this by yourself.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Napol.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
This question is for you.
Can you see me?
Not as yet. We can hear you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes. Would you please explain how the health of our mouth, our teeth, and our gums can affect our general health? And the second part of that question is, what is the connection between oral health and overall health?
Well, we live in a biome, or we live with biome, and in the oral cavity there are millions of bacteria, gram-negative, gram-positive, good and bad bacteria. So we need the bacteria to live. However, there are some bacteria that is not so good for us, and these bacteria can cause problems. And the presence of too much of these bad actors actually can create problems. As we know, we have a cardiologist there that the strep viridans bacteria, for instance, the one that causes tooth decay, is implicated in cardiac problems. And with the presence of so much bacteria, negative bacteria in the bloodstream causes an inflammatory response, which also causes blood vessels to thicken and problems as such. So knowing that we have all of this bacteria and understanding the importance of the good bacteria, we don't want to kill too many of them off with mouthwashes that don't work. So for instance, I don't use any toothpaste at all. The most important thing is to brush your teeth and remove these bacteria by mechanical means. No mouthwash will remove the plaque-causing bad actors from the teeth and the gums. I can go on and on, but I hope that gave some insight on the first part of the question. And then the second part of the question was, what is the connection, the connection between the oral cavity and general health?
Yes.
Well, the oral cavity is a place where we put a lot of things in our mouth, like sugary foods and foods which break down into simple sugars, and digestion begins in the mouth, in the oral cavity. And as we know, too much of these sugars, we have this problem with Candida, right? And which is not good for us, and that also brings about problems with the whole system. And diabetes is a serious problem when it comes to this. And if that this diet that most people consume creates major problems for our general health. So for me, as a practitioner, I have to educate my patients on what to put in their mouth and they should be eating in order to keep the oral cavity healthy.
Yes.
But simple sugars are these simple industrialized form of sugar, it creates problems.
Yes. Thank you,
I don't
Doc.
know if that's helped answer the question.
Yes, Doc. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to go to Dr. Watts, then we'll come back to Dr. Batiste. I know time is pressing. Dr. Wash, this first question is a very long one. Attempts to accelerate the development of a vaccine against COVID-19 are being pushed. However, recently serious inflammation affecting the pediatric population is gaining attention that was not apparent when this all began. What are your thoughts about speedily developing a vaccine to fight a disease that even scientists themselves do not understand fully?
All right, so let me start by saying I am not an anti-vax person. Vaccines have saved a lot of lives in this world. One of the reasons we don't worry about things like smallpox or polio today is because we vaccinate against it. Now, there's a lot of arguments as to whether every vaccine we give is necessary or should we give them or not give them. But overall, vaccines have saved a lot of lives. Obviously, the confusion, I think, comes a bit from the fact that it is very commercial as well. There's a lot of money to be made on vaccines. So you can argue that up and down if you want. I would say the reason we should be looking for a vaccine for this is because, again, this disease targets certain people. For example, a third of the deaths from coronavirus in this country, in America, have been in nursing homes. So if you could have vaccinated the people who work in the nursing homes and vaccinated the nursing home residents, you could have saved, all of those lives would not have had to be lost. So there's going to be a race to find a vaccine for a lot of reasons, not just money. There's a great amount of prestige that will happen if you're the one who figures out this vaccine. But I will admit, as something that is kind of hinted to there in the question, that it takes years to come up with a vaccine. There's a lot of studies that have to be done, and it's very difficult to do double-blinded randomized trials on a vaccine. It takes more time to actually test a vaccine for safety and efficacy. So rushing to do it is a little bit concerning. I would agree. And so I'm taking a wait and see approach. What I will say again, I'll go back even to what I said this morning. What we do know for a fact is that if you eat a diet rich in zinc, quercetin, resveratrol, which is found in the skin of grapes and dark berries, and other antioxidants, if you make sure you're getting enough vitamin D from the sun, and that you're staying away. You asked Dr. Batiste about eggs and meat earlier. Those are pro-inflammatory foods. The third phase of this disease is a hyperinflammatory response. So you want to stay away from any food that causes inflammation. If you do those things, the truth of the matter is, what we know about this disease right now is the disease is highly, highly, highly unlikely to touch you if you can reverse, especially diseases like hypertension, because the virus actually enters the cell through the ACE2 receptors, the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptor, which is what actually is one of the parts of the angiotensin renin-aldosterone system that actually regulates blood pressure and kidney function. So there's a lot you can do without a vaccine to actually be pretty much safe from this virus. And it's unfortunate, in my opinion, that the mass media is not talking more about that, that really this is a disease of lifestyle, and the fact that those people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease are 80, in the study I showed you guys this morning, over 86% of all of the serious cases and deaths happen in people with those conditions. And those are all products of the standard American diet, the Western diet. So you could actually reverse this whole viral thing with lifestyle to a great extent. So I'm not afraid of them coming up with a vaccine. I would tell you that God gave you a great vaccine in the health message. And if you're not following it, now's the time, as Dr. Batiste was saying earlier, to move towards the health message as much as you possibly can in order to protect yourself.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Walsh, we'll come back to a couple more questions on the vaccine, but just answer this one quickly for me. Is the rate of mutation in COVID-19 much higher than previous viruses?
So people say that. Let me tell you that before 2000, there were no cases of dangerous coronaviruses. So if you go back before 2000, it was coronavirus. The subtype is alpha, and those are common colds and so forth. We've had the coronaviruses for a long time. You notice when you look back at pandemics, it's bubonic plague, which is a bacteria. It's the Spanish flu, the Hong of 1918, the Hong Kong flu of 1968, 69. It was always an influenza. It was not a coronavirus. Something has changed in 2002 when SARS hit, and then later in that decade when MERS hit, and now COVID-19 has hit, that the coronaviruses are different. And there's a lot of theories as to why. Some people think it was something that happened in a virology lab. I wouldn't say that. I know a lot of conspiracy theorists probably believe that. But I will say something has changed in the way man is interacting with the animal hosts. Coronaviruses are known to jump from animals to humans. Something has changed, and coronaviruses do mutate pretty quickly. So we may be seeing some problems around coronaviruses for a long time. But let me throw in a little Bible for everybody for a second. Matthew chapter 24 talks about pestilence. It says that there will be wars and rumors of wars, famines and pestilence, and earthquakes in diverse places. That's verse 7 of Matthew 24. In verse 8 of Matthew 24, it then says, these are the beginning of sorrows. And then if you look at Revelation, it says that there will be 7 last plagues. Church, I want you to understand, if there are going to be 7 last plagues, there are going to be some plagues before that, because those are the last ones. And what we're looking at now is God warning us of the plagues that are coming. But he gives the promise in Exodus that if we live and eat the way God says, none of the diseases of the Egyptians will come upon us. And this is the time. This is why our health message is so important.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Dr. Batiste, how would you deal with a patient that went out of the country? They got stuck. They're running out of the medication, the meds they're using for hypertension. They are struggling with health reform, and they are bent on taking their meds, and they're out of the country. They cannot get meds. What would you say to that patient?
Well, that's a loaded question. So in terms of from a health standpoint, to be honest with you, as a medical doctor, it depends upon the overall state of their health. They could have heart failure, they may have underlying obstructive coronary artery disease, they may have had prior strokes, and so their need for medications depending upon their elevation as well. So how high is their blood pressure plays a significant role. Are they at risk for having an additional heart attack in that moment, or a stroke rather, from a quite marked elevated blood pressure? Now, if the question seems as if it's pointing me towards what types of an immediacy health food benefits can they obtain that can help them in that instance? And sure, there's several things. I alluded to the benefits of the berries and the dietary nitrates from your green leafy vegetables. We know hibiscus tea may provide some benefit. We know that some of our seeds, the chia, may be helpful, in flax, in terms of helping to lower the blood pressure. But will that be, we know too, as well as I told you, the sunlight can actually trigger a chemical process to release the stored nitrates in the skin to produce nitric oxide that may lead to small amounts of nitric oxide and lowering of the blood pressure. So there's some things that you can try, but will those be effective enough to lower the blood pressure? It really depends upon the severity of things. Blood pressure, chronic, persistent elevation is something that leads to demise long-term. So I usually describe this analogy to patients. It's kind of like if you're investing your retirement and you miss 1 or 2 payments towards your retirement, in the long term, it's probably going to be okay, right? If you miss 3 or 4 or 5, 6 years, that's not going to be okay, especially the older, the closer you get to it, the more imperative it is. And so if your blood pressure is in the moderate range and it's in the 140s to 160s range, that typically is not life-threatening in the short immediacy, right? In the immediate term, a blood pressure that's in the 190s, 200s, over 90s to 100s, that's concerning about the increased risk in terms of strain and stress on the heart, in terms of the elevation in pressure perfusion inside the brain leading to strokes. And so that becomes more concerning, as does the opposite, which is too low of a blood pressure, below 90 for the top number, becomes concerning too as well. So if I have a family member who is out of state or whatever it may be, I would do my best to try, or excuse me, out of the country, I would do my best to try and refill their medications and ship it to them, to be honest with you. It's what I would do from a practical standpoint while I'm encouraging them. Get your sleep, right? Get your sleep. Why? Because it lowers your stress hormone levels as you are able to engage in sleep close to 7 hours. I'm telling them to get some sunlight, measured doses. So you get your vitamin D, which becomes extremely important as this distinct correlation between low vitamin D in African Americans as well as in those who have heart disease too as well. I'm telling them to as well to make sure they engage as far as in spirituality as well as in nutrition.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, Vitamin D and heart health. Considering some of our senior citizens, some of these residencies and retired homes with the limitation of workers not going in, uh, sunlight just coming through the window, is that sufficient for them to get enough vitamin D?
It's not. It's not. And, I'm sure many of the panelists here can speak to the issues pertaining vitamin D. We know that there's a stark vitamin D deficiency in amongst African Americans, and it has to do in part with our skin pigmentation. In part, it has to do with our urban city dwelling lives where we don't get outdoors and we have reflected ambient light as opposed to direct sunlight. When we're out in the sun, we're covered typically there. We know that the sun is extremely powerful in triggering vitamin D. That is our main source of vitamin D. Yes, you can get it from mushrooms in small amounts. Yes, you can get it from animal products. Yes, you can have it from fortified grains and milk products, whether vegan or non-vegan, inside of the stores. But our principal method of getting it is through sunlight. Now, supplementation is the other, right? So the values vary, but somewhere up to 2,000 international units is somewhat recommended that one will ingest. Now, the skin can produce 10 to 20,000 if you're out for the extended period of time that you need to. But as you mentioned, inside of a setting of a nursing home or inside of a situation where we get busy and we're not able to get out, yes, we probably should ingest it. Now, here's the key. The problem is that the data has been up and down as it relates. We know there's a distinct relationship between low vitamin D and disease, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, etc., even Alzheimer's, even depression. But the question is, are those diseases lowered by replacing it with supplementation? And the data on that has ebb and flowed. My recommendations are to supplement, right? My recommendations are to get sunlight for its health benefits. And even if we do the math, it's fairly easy. If I get out and I'm walking and I spend an hour out in the sun between 10 and 3, right, and measure the amount, about an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer because of my skin hue, that I may potentially produce enough vitamin D for that week for myself. But it's important to know and to take the precautions. Most of us don't have that time.
Thank you, Dr. Baptiste. We know you have to go shortly, so I'm going to ask you two more questions, and then we'll move on to the other panelists. The next question is there a correlation between vitamin C and heart health? And if so, please explain. And the final question is vaccine the answer from a cardiologist standpoint?
Yeah. So what I'll tell you is this, is that what we know is that we're very reductionist in terms of our society. And what I mean by that is we're all looking for that magical secret ingredient. That if I just take this component, I'm going to be cured. If I just take this, I'm going to be fine, right? And the problem with that is that we're overstating our level of intelligence compared to what God has given to us. So when we extract out the vitamin C alone, we're eliminating all the phytonutrients that science is beginning to uncover and tell us the powerful benefits of everything from the skin on the outside, as Dr. Walsh mentioned about the quercetin and the other components. We look at the skin, the resveratrol, all these components. Instead of us extracting out, we're losing out on the benefits. We know that there's an increased absorption in some studies when one takes an orange compared to taking in the supplement solely. We know there is extreme powerful. So yes, we need our zinc, we need our vitamin D, we need our vitamin C are so important. The ideal situations for you to get it from nature, from what God's put on this earth. If you can't, yes, supplement and take your vitamin C, that's fine. But your best source is going that direction, is what I always recommend, because the question ultimately every day we should be asking ourselves is, what am I eating for my health? as opposed to focusing on what I don't do this and I don't do that. What am I doing? As it relates to the idea of vaccination and heart health, in terms of with the coronavirus, well, I mean, it kind of it's a natural line of thought that if I take a vaccination that prevents me from having the disease, then we know there's benefit. Now, here's the interesting part. There were actually studies that were done, not with the coronavirus, but with other viruses, where they actually injected people. Some participants decided to go ahead and do this study, right? They went ahead and ingested, or excuse me, they dropped in viral loads in about 300 some odd patients. And what they found is that those who built up the immunity were more likely to be those who ingested the fruits and vegetables and whole grains, compared to those who didn't, were less likely to have the immune response to it. Now, here's the other thing. They also did another study where they did the same sort of thing, and it took this in. Those who were more stressed, who had less social connections, were more likely to develop the manifestations of the disease, become symptomatic from it. Because we know that 80+% who develop the coronavirus have no symptoms whatsoever. They're just carriers. And so we know that this love, that support, we know that our dietary, all of these multifaceted approaches are important for our healing and for our immunity. And so that's what I would say as it relates to it's not one or the other. It's not either or. It's both in concert become so equally important.
Thank you, Dr. Batiste.
Right. And I do apologize. I have to leave out now, but it's been a pleasure and an honor to be on this panel with everyone on here today. Okay, I'll hear everyone else's response for the remaining portion afterwards.
Thank you, Dr. Batiste. We do appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us today such vital information. I know you related a lot of practical things that can be done, so we thank you once more. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Dr. Woods, next question for you. With so many babies developing plagiocephaly, why aren't more pediatricians talking about it at a baby's first doctor's visit to educate?
Right, so that's a very good question. And actually, we should be talking about it at the very first doctor's visit. And what plagiocephaly is, it's when, because of this back to sleep campaign where we advise you to lay your child on their back to go to sleep, a lot of babies are starting to get a very flat back of their head. And then around 4 months or so, we have to fit them for a helmet so that we can kind of round out the shape of their head. And so that, in short, is what plagiocephaly is. Sometimes it's not just the back, it could be the flat side of the head because they're laying on that side. But basically, one part of their head becomes abnormally shaped just because they're always laying on it. So what we recommend to treat that is something called tummy time. So 3 to 4 times a day, we recommend about 10 minutes each time. We recommend that babies are put on their tummy while they're awake so that they are off the back of their heads. And it also helps foster muscle development and growth in their arms and their legs. And so unfortunately, I think more pediatricians are not pushing for tummy time. After you see a number of babies with plagiocephaly, you should definitely start at the first visit. Definitely, I mentioned it in the very first month. We see the babies about twice their first month of life. I know at 3 weeks, I say, okay, it's time to start doing tummy time. The issue with tummy time is a lot of babies don't like it and they cry. And so a lot of parents aren't very fond of tummy time just because their baby's crying. And so that's why I say to do it for short amounts of time, and the baby will get used to it. But it's something that absolutely needs to be done starting at about 3 weeks of age, your baby on their tummy for sure, to help prevent that plagiocephaly that can develop.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Porterfield, can you please?
Yes.
Let's see here. What are some of the long-lasting psychological effects that we would experience after COVID passes, so to speak?
Well, right now at this time, we can only guess.
Yes.
We could look at some of the past crises that we've had in our world. As I've read the literature, it seems as though the mental health professionals are comparing this, believe it or not, more to the Great Depression. in terms of the impact economically and the effect of it, the worldwide effect, or I should say in his case, the US effect. But after the Great Depression, there was an increase in suicide, there was an increase in depression, all of the common psychological disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety. I really think this is going to be the worst of them all, because this has impacted not only the US, but the world. And it's affected our relationships across seas, within the borders. I can't imagine what's going to be the result. It reminded me of Luke 21, when it says men's heart failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. I believe that this is a definite fulfillment of that, because this thing has induced so much fear in people. It just came out of nowhere. It's something we can't control. So all of the diagnosable diseases are going to increase. Psychologists, mental health professionals, psychiatrists, they're going to be seeing more people. Right now, I'm doing online counseling, and I sometimes have to cut off my availability because I'm just swamped with people, because not only are we dealing with people who are dealing with first-time anxiety or depression, but we have people who had pre-existing conditions, and this whole pandemic is just increasing their issues. It's exacerbating their issues. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like, and I believe the effects are not going to be short-term. I believe it's going to be long-term. But I also want to say this: the majority of the population will not be diagnosed with these disorders. As much as I say all of this, it's not going to be the majority. Most of us will bounce back. But as time gets closer to the end, and we know the Bible talks about more and more things happening, I do believe psychological issues are going to be increasing. And not only are mental health professionals going to need to be ready, but those of us who believe in God and have the gospel are going to have to be ready too, because I believe the gospel will, presenting it to people, helping understand that there's a God who loves them. I'm talking to people more and more about that. People are so open now to hearing about religious things that were not open to hearing about it before. So I believe even though the mental health disorders will increase, I believe more people will be afraid. I also believe this is an opening for us as Christians to be able to share more with people, to give them hope, to let them know that there is hope at the end, that there's a God who loves them, and there's a God who's coming back to save us. So for me, that's what I'm looking at with the whole picture. My workload will increase, but I also want this as an opportunity to share with people God's love.
Amen. Yes, wonderful. As a caregiver, what would you share with a caregiver who's concerned about being burnt out during this pandemic?
Oh, that's really something. One of the first things I would say to caregivers is that they need to be able to care for themselves. It's really hard for us to care for somebody else if we are depleted, if we are run down. And I know we may not be able to do all of the things that we want to do, because depending on what type of case we're dealing with, it might take away from our time. But somehow, even if it means somebody coming and taking that care of that person for a few hours, going out into nature, making sure we get some type of physical activity outside. We're talking about sunlight, getting that vitamin D, getting that sunshine to help those happy hormones. Just doing all of these things to care for ourselves is one of the most important things that a caregiver can do. I believe when you care for yourself, it's going to be less likely that you will experience burnout, or that burnout will really burn you out. The other thing is their respite services. Try to see if you can find out about respite services where someone else can care for your loved one for a while and you go away for a while. There's services out there like that. And then also find someone you can talk to. Sometimes just being able to talk about some of the stress and burden that you have, saying, you know, this is really hard, pray for me, having someone to just listen to you and to not just have a gripe session, but just share how much this is burdensome, and talking with them. That can be a lot too, to help with burnout. And of course, one of the best people we can talk to is the Lord, saying, Lord, this is hard for me. I need your strength. I need your power. Please take over, because my human strength is coming to an end. Give me your supernatural power to be able to handle caring for my loved one. And God will do that for us. I believe that.
Thank you. Thank you. Folks, I hope we are taking notes. You shall live and not die. Dr. Nepal.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Is it safe to go to the dentist during the pandemic? And I know you responded to the second part of this before, but maybe you can expound a little bit more. What advice would you give to us on oral health while being sheltered in?
Okay. Most importantly is diet. While you're sheltered in, many people take the time to eat sugary foods because the body is in a state of rest and relaxation. So everybody wants to feel comfortable. They eat a lot of sandwiches, a lot of breads, a lot of cakes, things like that. And they get themselves in a really good mood. And but what that's doing is that that's feeding those bad bugs that which I talked about in the beginning, you know, and building up the level of candida in the intestinal tract. When that happens, you get increased uh, uh, inflammatory response in the system, and makes it very and then you become controlled by these bugs versus you controlling your body. So stay away from sugary foods. Also, use plain water, good toothbrush, and floss.
Mhm.
Eat a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, and of course, get your sunlight and do some exercise. Because everybody's talking about the value of the vitamin D, and of course, we know bones and teeth. Bones, teeth, hair, nails, skin, all of these things are all feeding upon this vitamin D.
Mhm.
So that is something that we should do while we're home in this situation. Now, when it is safe to go to the dentist, but there are, because the dentist is wearing his PPE, he or she is well protected and protecting you from the dental staff. Also, the office is well disinfected continuously between patients.
Yes.
And if you're going to an office that is seeing a high volume of patients, I think that would be a little bit sketchy in the sense that there's not enough time to really do a good job of cleaning up. So for me, what I have done, I have reduced the amount of patients that I'm seeing.
Yes.
So I've cut the number of patients by more than half, which gives me more than enough time to prepare for that patient, clean it, and also we know that the COVID-19 virus is spread by water droplets. Now, in dental offices, that would be the place that you would find COVID-19 and would be a higher risk area, because the dental handpiece, if you're treating a patient with COVID-19, the dental handpiece is going to spray that COVID-19 all over the office into these fine droplets that you can't see, and that's just going to hang in the air of the dental office.
Yes.
So you should take that into consideration when going to see a dentist. You should question the dentist and ask the dentist, well, how are you handling aerosols? What method are they using to take care of the aerosols? What methods are they using to take care of the cleaning of the surfaces? Because yes, I would say the dentist is a dangerous place for this virus.
Thank you, Doc. Dr. Walsh, please share with us concerning masks, when we should wear them, how long we should wear them, where we should wear them, and how it relates to the continuous inhaling of carbon dioxide.
Well, it depends a lot on what kind of mask you use. Masks actually can, as our brother the dentist was just saying, masks. This virus is transmitted through respiratory droplets. So in areas where everybody wears a mask, you've actually seen where there is much lower transmission of the disease. In fact, up to 80% of what has been transmitted of this disease so far could have been prevented if everybody was just wearing a mask. So masks in and of themselves are not bad, especially if you go into a high-risk situation. The problem I'm seeing is people are making masks at home, or people are making masks themselves. You can't breathe through the mask. So I only wear masks, and I can get these at the clinic. There's been a shortage, so I've actually had to we've had to have things where you kind of save your mask and use them throughout the day, kind of. But the mask, you want to be able to breathe through the mask, so that your carbon dioxide can go out through the mask, and some of the surgical masks we use can do that. But also when you breathe in, it actually does filter what you're breathing in. There's some filtration that happens. So I mean, that's really my advice on masks. If you, especially, I'm gonna go back to this, are someone who's high risk because you have high blood pressure, heart disease, COPD, cancer, HIV, or other immunosuppressive diseases, you definitely want to wear a mask when you go out. In fact, I would argue you might want to wear a mask and even have a pair of glasses or goggles on, because even the epithelium around your eyes, you can actually get if someone who's the cough in your face, it could actually get into your body through the mucous membranes around your eyes and get into your body. When the churches open back up, this is going to be an interesting discussion, because a lot of states are probably going to want you to wear a mask when you go to church, and people wear masks inside of the church building. And I wouldn't be afraid of it. What I would say is get a mask that you can breathe through, that does some filtering. And I had a patient the other day, he could not stand wearing masks. He was a vice president for safety for a big company, ironically, a big company, all of you know. And he didn't want to wear a mask. And I was like, but you're telling everybody at the job to wear a mask. He's like, I can't breathe through it. And I gave him one of the masks that we use, that when you put on, you can tighten up around your nose and you can breathe through it. And he was so happy. And that would be my advice about masks, because they can actually stop transmission. And so, you don't want to go to church where there are a lot of older people with a lot of other illnesses, and you don't know what they may or may not have. And then, because so many people don't have symptoms, you can actually bring the virus around and give it to somebody else. So even if you're healthy and you don't get sick, we don't know if you might be a carrier.
Well, let me give you a follow-up question to that, Doc. The mask you're speaking of, is it available to the general public, one? And two, is it healthy for someone to be in a church service, which is normally enclosed, wearing a mask for 2 hours?
Absolutely. I mean, we wear them in the hospital and in clinic settings for hours on end sometimes. I think it's okay. I don't, again, if you're in church and you're wearing a mask and you don't want to wear the whole thing, just get up and walk outside, take your mask off, take a break and go back in. The masks I'm talking about, by now, I think you can buy them. I'm telling you, I've got people calling me from all over America to try and sell me masks and gloves and gowns. It's like like the new ghetto thing. Everybody trying to sell masks and gowns now. So I'm sure you can find them if you wanted them, because they're everywhere now. But that would be my advice. Get a mask you can breathe through when you go to church. If you can breathe through it, it's not difficult to sit with it on. It's when you have on these big, people make me some masks, I put them on a cloth, I can't breathe through it. So it's like I'm breathing around it, which may not really make a difference, because I'm not filtering anything that I'm breathing through.
Okay. One more question. I've contracted the virus. Do I have an immunity against it?
This is a great question. And we are actually, in my clinic system, we've begun doing antibody testing. And what we're finding, let me say this to everybody first. Everybody thought they already had the coronavirus. Everybody talked to was sick in January, February. They said, I must have had the coronavirus. We're finding across the country, and our company has about 150 clinics across the country. In most places, only about 2% of people that we're testing, and we're testing hundreds and hundreds of people, 2% have antibodies. In New York, it's as high as 10%. And New York is the epicenter. So most people have not developed antibodies to this virus in the United States yet. I would highly believe that that's the case. Here's what we don't know. We don't know, once you even have the antibodies, how much immunity, if any immunity, you get. If we use SARS as an example, going back to 2002, people had an immunity, I've read one article that said about a year long. So maybe those who've already had it at least should have some immunity for a year, but we don't know for sure yet. So I would say right now, we don't know, and we will find out. The science will catch up. So just stay tuned. In the meantime, do all of the protective things, washing the hands, keeping your hands away from your face. And again, the diet stuff, mushrooms, whole grain foods, nuts, seeds, lots of fruits and vegetables, drink your water, get your vitamin D. That is the best protection you have right now.
Thank you, Doc. Before I go to Dr. Woods, would you recommend someone going out on the outside and walking or running a couple miles with their mask on?
Not at all. You don't need to. When you go outside, what the studies have now shown is that the virus is not very well transmitted outside. The ultraviolet rays from the sun and maybe some other forces from the sun or outside, the virus does not do well in the sun. It does not do well in humidity. And it is difficult to transmit outside, specifically because if you go do a 2-mile run, are you going to run up into somebody's face? Probably not. So you're not going to, it takes time for this thing to transfer. So if you just run and especially if you're running by yourself, I did 4.5 miles this morning. I didn't put on a mask because who am I going to, I ran by a bear out in our neighborhood, but I'm sure I don't think the bear had coronavirus. So, I don't wear a mask when I go outside to exercise. So I would not recommend that because I don't think you need it. I do think you need to be outside and you need to stay some distance. Like if I run into the neighbors, I stay 6 feet away, just partly because that's social pressure now, but also because who knows? I'd rather just keep my distance. But if you go outside, I would not wear a mask unless you're going to be in tight quarters outside.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. There's much concern for African-American babies being born with jaundice. What is it that expecting mothers can do to minimize this type of birth?
Right, so that's a great question. And actually, when you look at our rates are not higher than the general population, but something we do notice is that we have a higher incidence of a disorder called G6PD deficiency. And when you have that deficiency, it leads you to have jaundice. I know every baby I've taken care of that has that deficiency certainly has had jaundice. So that does put us more at risk. We also have, we're at higher risk for sickle cell disease. So that also can cause jaundice in the newborn state. So as far as we know, there's nothing really that a parent can do to help prevent jaundice as far as just being aware. So just knowing we're darker skinned, and so jaundice causes yellow skin, which you may not always see, but always check the eyes. The whites of the eye, those become yellow in the instance of jaundice. And so it's just important to be aware of noticing that in your baby so that you can take them to the physician to get checked. And also it's important to put the baby in sunlight. You can do it in direct sunlight near a window. I always tell parents to do it about 3 times a day, 10 to 20 minutes, just with, if possible, minimal clothing like a onesie, and just allowing the sunlight to help shine on their skin, because that does help decrease jaundice. And so we recommend those things. And then just as a parent, it's important to help eat healthy for the pregnant moms and after they have the baby, to continue to eat a good plant-based diet, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, drinking lots of water, because that of course will go to the baby if you're breastfeeding, and that will help lower their risk of jaundice, as well as breastfeeding can help reduce jaundice as well.
Thank you. You alluded to sickle cell disease. What are some of the legitimate reasons why African Americans are at high risk?
For sickle cell disease? Well, it mainly affects African Americans. There's very few other races that are affected with sickle cell disease, but it gives you some resistance to malaria. And so scientifically, that's about all that we can see as to why we're higher risk, but we're the ones that do get it. And it's important that you get tested. So we are now testing all newborns for sickle cell anemia. We also recommend testing all African American pregnant women for sickle cell anemia, just so they can be educated. Because of course, if the mom has sickle cell anemia and the father of the baby also has sickle cell anemia, or if they're carriers, it puts their baby at higher risk for getting sickle cell anemia. So education is the key to help reducing the sickle cell prevalence in our community.
Thank you. Dr. Porterfield, what are some of the things employers can do to minimize psychological effects on their employees?
Well, that's a good question. That's really a corporate question, but I'll take a stab at it. One of the things that employers can do is make sure they provide a supportive environment. As employees are coming back, Some of them may need some adjustment to getting back full-time work, and employees need to realize that. I'm reading and finding out, and as a psychologist, recognizing we've been in this state for almost 8 weeks now. And so it's going to take some adjustment, even getting back to normal. And employers need to realize that and allow employees to have staggered hours if possible, allowing them to come in and gradually adjust to having normal working hours, and recognizing that, being open to being supportive to some of their employees who may have been diagnosed with COVID-19 or have family members that they lost, just providing a whole atmosphere of support. There's a lot of managerial training that needs to happen as well, helping managers to know how to deal with their employees as they're coming back and providing a supportive environment. Even thinking more about corporate wellness. You know, some companies have wellness programs, and if companies don't have that, that might be something they want to implement to help their employees to enhance not only their mental health, but their physical health as well, because they want to do things that's going to increase the productivity of their employees. So whatever they can do, talking with their employees, well, how can I help you? How can I help you make this adjustment back to work? How can I give you the right hours to work within so you can deal with whatever other issues you're dealing at work? Support's going to be so important. So I think that's the main thing, is being as supportive as possible, not just looking at the company's bottom line, but also looking at the welfare of their employees. I think that's going to be very important.
Thank you. That's critical. What would you say to someone who is in an abusive relationship during this pandemic, and there's no apartments that taking on new tenants at this time? The hotels, the prices are extremely high, and they're wanting to leave, but pretty much have nowhere to go. What would you recommend?
That's a tough situation to be in. I would really want to reach out to, even more to these people, I would want to reach out to people who are friends and family members. They're going to be really important during this time. They can be opening their homes or helping these people find places to reside, especially if they're in physical danger. But to the persons themselves, I wanted to encourage them to contact their loved ones. Tell them what the situation is. A lot of times with domestic violence, what keeps it going is the secrecy. Yes. They are afraid to let people know what's going on. If you're in that kind of situation, do not keep it secret. I'm not saying to wear a poster and start marching all around to let people know, but find some people and say, this is what's going on. I need your support. I need your help. I want you to call me regularly. I want you to check on me. And make those people understand to do that in a way to not incite the perpetrator, because you have to be really careful, so you have to be wise. But tell them to reach out to family members, reach out to friends. If they're in immediate danger, it's of dire importance that they call 911. No ifs, ands about it. They have to take care of themselves. So reach out to people, ask around to potential places, ask people, do you know of places that I can get temporary houses during this time? And also take care of themselves, because the more they take care of themselves, the stronger they can be to deal with the situation and to make proper decisions. So those are the kind of things that come to my mind immediately for people in those situations.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Nepal. Dr. Nepal there? If not, I'll come back to Dr. Nepal. Dr. Walsh, at what point, I know you mentioned earlier about the face mask, and there's a few more concerns. At what point does a face mask start to prevent the flow of oxygen? I know you're saying that doctors wear it a lot. We are told that surgeons wear it mainly to prevent an open wound from being infected instead of the opposite. Can you elaborate a little bit on face mask, and at what point, length of wearing it, does it start to affect the oxygen flow?
So I'm not sure why someone's so obsessed with face masks, honestly. There are much bigger issues to be discussing right now than face masks, to be honest with you. But I would only say, again, get a face mask you can breathe through. If you can't breathe through the face mask, that's a problem, because then you're gonna feel like you're suffocating, and you might, and you may suffocate. Wearing a face mask too long is a problem if you pass out, because that means you're wearing one and you're not breathing at all. But again, the face masks serve a purpose. So if you are going out, especially if you're going around people you don't know, it's not a bad idea to have one that you can breathe through. So if you're really concerned about face masks, go get a surgical mask, find them online and buy a box of them, and wear those, because you can breathe right through them and you won't suffocate. You'll get all the oxygen you need, and you'll get rid of your carbon dioxide, because those are very small molecules that easily pass through the filtration system. And what will be caught are the droplets for diseases you don't want to get and that you don't want to give to other people.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Dr. Woods, supplements for children, what would you recommend?
Okay. So I know one of the doctors touched on this a little bit. So supplements are mainly meant to replace things that you're not taking in either through your diet or your normal activity. So of course, getting the real thing, like was mentioned earlier, eating an orange is going to be better than, supplementing, taking the vitamin C supplement and what have you. Going outside and getting real sunlight is going to be better than actually taking the supplement. But because we have children that are picky eaters, they don't eat that well, their diet may be limited for different reasons. We recommend, I just recommend all parents give their kids a regular pediatric multivitamin with iron. And so that usually meets a lot of the daily requirements for everything that they need. But it's far better to teach your children to eat healthy. So eating enough fruits and vegetables, getting protein from beans, nuts, and grains. Someone mentioned chia seeds and flaxseed. In my family, we try to have a lot of smoothies, and I put vegetables in there and fruit, and then chia seed. So there's lots of dietary things that you can eat that'll give you a lot of the trace minerals and vitamins that your body needs to be healthy. But if your child is on a limited diet, then by all means, give them a multivitamin. They mentioned in this pandemic era that's important to take zinc and vitamin D, of course, those are very healthy. And then garlic is very good. It's a strong antiviral, antibacterial. My children, they were all raised eating raw garlic, so they have no problem eating it. But it's a good idea to also give your children garlic, either cook with it. If they're okay eating raw garlic, go ahead and give it to them. But that's a very good supplement for them.
Thank you. Question again for you, Doc. What would you explain? Let's see. Tell us about undescended testicles in older boys.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So, about that.
Right. So ideally, we want to catch that in the newborn stage. And when we do, we refer them for surgery. And they usually do the surgery around 4 or 6 months of age, because we're finding that the longer the testicles are undescended, the more at risk it can be to lead to infertility. So now if you have an older child that it wasn't caught, or they weren't able to have surgery for whatever reason, and an older child, we still recommend proceeding with the surgery, just to give them the chance as they get older and they get married to have children. So we still recommend treating it, but for sure in the newborn stage and as babies, the pediatrician should have picked those things up. And even as parents, you can check in your tiny babies and just to make sure that both their testicles are descended as well. And there's another phenomenon we see where the testicles are retractile, meaning they come down and go back up. That's okay. If they're able to come down, then we're okay with that. But if they're truly not coming down, they're undescended, we do refer them for surgical correction.
Okay. Thank you. Is Dr. Nepal back?
Yes.
Yes. I know you mentioned some things earlier, but can you please reiterate? Many of our viewers or listeners are wanting some more understanding as to oral health, because I think you mentioned no toothpaste and mouthwash and so forth. Can you please reiterate a little bit as to what they can do at home to experience oral health without the toothpaste that they're so used to and the strong mouthwash?
Oh, very good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
The bacteria gets removed by mechanical means at best. The best way to remove the bad bugs from your mouth is mechanically. So most people aren't very good at brushing and flossing because they weren't taught. The average person wasn't taught by a dental professional. They were given a brush by a parent from a very early age, and many kids are unsupervised.
Yes.
But it's very important for the children, and we have a pediatrician here, to tell the parents to help the child to brush the teeth up until they're 10 years old. So brushing should be supervised up until 10. The less of these bad bugs in the mouth, the better off we are health-wise, the whole body. Now, if we become skilled at flossing the teeth, the vast majority of people don't know how to floss either. Whatever you can do to take any kind of floss and try to get it in between the teeth from an early age would help develop the skill and the familiarity with the action as we age.
Yes.
The strong mouthwashes. Now, the bacterial plaque bacteria lives in a matrix. It's a gel-like matrix that no mouthwash on the market can remove from the oral cavity. So be it Listerine and all those nice ads that they have, those things do not work. So it's a waste of time going to the drugstore and spending your money buying a big gallon of mouthwash. And what that does, it kills more of your good bacteria than the bad ones. So it's a waste of time.
Yes.
Become very good at brushing the tongue, brushing all the teeth surfaces, flossing all of the teeth, and just using plain water to rinse and whatever. Now, if your dentist can recommend a mouthwash for by prescription, that's the only mouthwash that is scientifically proven to kill the bad bugs. That's the only one. Then the children today, many of them are also given fluoride by the dentist, you know, and that's another thing there that is controversial. So the fluoride, if we eating the right foods, we don't need it. We get the fluoride from the foods. And fluoride, as other professionals here knows, that fluoride replaces, as far as the teeth is concerned, the teeth is very similar to bone. And the organic matrix of teeth is made up of, I believe it has some calcium hydroxide in there. That gets replaced by fluoride. And over time, the bone becomes more dense and more brittle from fluoride. So if you look at studies where there are communities that had too much fluoride from drinking well water or something like that, you would find that they have a lot of problems with their bones and their health. So we must also look at that. Now, I don't want to take this thing too far, but I hope that that information is enough.
Yes, Doctor.
Is that enough?
Yes, Doctor.
Okay.
That was clear. That was clear.
All right.
Well, I'm going to throw a question out here, and each one of Dr. Walsh, Dr. Woods, you can take a stab at this one. It says here, God created a mitochondria in our cell, cytoplasm, mainly to burn sugars. So what is the problem with consuming sugars? I know you spoke of the processed sugars and so forth, but pause, please, feel free.
You can go first if you want, but I have an answer for that. So Dr. Woods can go first if she wants to.
Yes.
Oh, no, by all means, Dr. Walsh, you can go ahead.
All right, I'll try and be quick. So it's the problem with sugar in the diet isn't what it does on the cellular level, even though there is some problems there. It really is the amount of sugar that rushes into the system all at once. When I was growing up, my grandmother would make us Kool-Aid, and of course, Kool-Aid itself is sugar. And then she would take a 5-pound bag of sugar and add sugar to that. So the Kool-Aid was like liquid crack. You hear me preach? I always say that. Kool-Aid was like, man, the Kool-Aid would light you up. You feel good after a glass of that Kool-Aid. But what we now know is that by the time it hits your tongue and is going down your throat into your esophagus, your body's already absorbing the sugar. That simple sugar immediately gets absorbed into the bloodstream. So you get a massive rush of sugar into the system. And herein, that is the problem. When you eat fruits, the sugar, the fructose, is bound to fiber. It's a very slow, persistent, consistent release of sugar that gives you a nice flat curve of the release of sugar and then back down. When you do Kool-Aid or a honey bun or a Twinkie or whatever, it shoots way up, shoots way down. So it makes you release a whole lot of insulin all at once. The sugar's absorbed into your system really fast. That causes problems with tryptophan entering your brain. So with serotonin production, so it can affect mental health. The sugar is also an oxidizing agent. So when sugar is running loose in your blood at these high levels like that, it actually causes cellular damage, which can lead to many other problems. And what I was even talking about this morning is when your sugar levels get high, even above the level of 120, it actually will go into the cell, preferably over vitamin C. And your white blood cell is the cell I'm talking about. Your white blood cell needs vitamin C at high concentrations to do its work. So when you're taking a lot of sugar, your white blood cells are not effective, and so you're more prone to infections. The massive increase, sugar crosses the blood-brain barrier, gets into the brain. It is one of the fuels, one of the only fuels the brain can actually use. So when you get these high spikes of sugar, the kid gets all this energy, and then they drop all the way back down. And that is a problem. In fact, I would argue people are trying to look for reasons for some of the attention deficit and autism and all these different things. Maybe not as much autism, but like attention deficit kids have. A lot of it has to do with these massive sugar spikes. And of course, time sitting in front of a television where the screen changes every 8 seconds and they go to school, the teacher doesn't change at all. The teacher sits the same way all 40 minutes of the day of the class. So sugar, that is the problem. It's not what happens at the mitochondrial level, except that if you rush all the sugar in, too much of it will go where it's not supposed to go, including fat cells. Your body will take the energy to convert it into fat and store it in the fat cells. So God designed sugar always to be bound to fiber. Never forget that. Every way sugar naturally comes, it's bound to fiber, so it's a slow release. The only place in nature where sugar is not bound to fiber is in honey. And then God put bees to protect the honey. So you're not even supposed to overdo the honey. Even that, God put some fail-safe towards. So, just be very careful with sugar. It's a very dangerous food when it's a processed and unattached to fiber.
Thank you. Any comment, Dr. Woods?
No, he was very comprehensive. I was just going to mention the link with ADHD and sugar. And so that's what we see in kids all the time. That in combination with the screen time, like Dr. Walsh already mentioned. So it's important now that a lot of the parents are stuck at home with their kids, that they really keep an eye on their diet. Don't give them too much sugar, but definitely allow them to go outside and still burn off energy, run around, ride their bikes with a helmet, play outside, because that's going to help get rid of some of the energy that kids naturally have.
Yes, thank you. That was clear. Dr. Porterfield, do you see a high correlation between many of your patients and high sugar intake?
Oh, yes. I work with a lot of people with depression, and it's interesting. People who are depressed tend to turn to sugar as a comfort food because it gives that initial rush that Dr. Walsh referred to. And oftentimes, those who follow my recommendation of getting off sugar report a noticeable decrease in their depressive symptoms. I'm not saying that it completely solves their depression problems, but those who reduce it or take it out of their diet, especially the refined sugar, definitely see a difference. And even with anxiety, any of these disorders, the sugar goes to the brain and has a negative impact. Can even blunt frontal lobe functioning, which we know when they do the PET scans with depression that the frontal lobe doesn't work as well. So we want to take out anything that's not natural and to help with mental health. So yes, I do see a relationship between the sugar and mental health, even in the work that I do with people.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Woods, there seems to be a rare COVID-related inflammatory disease affecting children. Can you shed some light on that, please?
Yes, so this is something that has been gaining a lot of attention over the past month. This inflammatory syndrome was initially noticed or documented in Europe, and now it's spreading to the United States, and as the COVID, is coming to the United States as well, and a number of cases in New York, and where I live in Phoenix, Arizona, we've had a couple cases. I know 2 patients that I know a person at my clinic that we've sent to the hospital. And so what we're seeing is there is a link with coronavirus and this inflammatory syndrome. Not all the patients have coronavirus. They're not all positive, even though they've been tested multiple times. And so the caution here is one of the underlying symptoms is fever for a prolonged time. So it's linked to another disease that affects children called Kawasaki disease, which is a known disease. And it starts out with fever lasting over 7 days. And so we just caution parents, if you're noticing that your child has a fever lasting over 7 days, that we do recommend that you seek medical attention. It may or may not come with other symptoms initially, including some skin manifestations, feeling of their fingertips or their feet, their skin, a conjunctivitis like a pink eye, red eyes with drainage. They can also get some swelling of redness of their tongue. That's abnormal. But all of these symptoms recommend that you do seek medical attention because it could progress to this inflammatory syndrome. With all that being said, not a lot of children are dying from this syndrome, but they are certainly getting hospitalized for a long amount of time. They're requiring intensive care admissions. And so we just want to keep an eye on it and see how it affects children. Of course, we don't know what the long-term effects are going to be of these children who have got this inflammatory syndrome, but just for parents to be aware that it's out there, for pediatricians to know that it's out there, and just to really be watchful so that you can make the connections when you see kids with mild symptoms but prolonged fever. And so I want to just add, a lot of times parents are very quick to give their children Tylenol and ibuprofen and things like that when they have a fever, but it's important to realize that a fever does have a function in your body. Your body is trying to fight off some sort of illness, some kind of virus. And so the fever has a job to do. And so when we give acetaminophen and ibuprofen and things like that, we are blunting the body's natural immune response to an infection. And so be very cautious about that. If the fever is very high, definitely over 103, I recommend like warm baths, cold washcloths or ice to the head or to the back of the neck, and try to bring down the fever in a natural way instead of just automatically giving medication to bring down the fevers.
Yes, so true. Thank you. This question is first to Dr. Walsh. First to Dr. Woods and Dr. Walsh, and I have a related question for Dr. Porterfield and Dr. Napol. The correlation or the link between vaccines and autism. First, Dr. Woods.
So this is a very interesting question. And like Dr. Walsh, I myself, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but there are numerous studies out there regarding a possible link between one vaccine in particular, the MMR vaccine. And so what I caution my parents is my job is just to be a patient advocate and just to educate them. I do recommend getting the vaccine. I just sometimes give the parents the option of not necessarily giving the vaccine at a year. They're able to get it at other times, 2 years and 3 years. And and again at 4 years. So I give them that option if they want to get it now, or if they want to kind of wait. There has been some studies regarding autism and African-American males when they receive some of those vaccines at their scheduled times. So I just educate parents and let them make that decision. I do believe that vaccines do serve a wonderful purpose. They have eradicated or nearly eradicated many diseases, but there's some that we may not necessarily need to get at the time that it's scheduled. So I just recommend that the parents do vaccinate their kids at some point in their childhood, but I give them the option as to when they want to get them and what schedule they would like to follow when they get their vaccines.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Walsh?
If I'm answering the same question, I would say that the original study where they made this connection, pretty much all of the authors have rescinded the study, and the study has been pulled back. I don't know that there really was ever a true connection in the sense of the original study. There have been some other things around African-American boys, as was just mentioned. But again, if your child was to get measles and get really sick, which happens here in the States now because people aren't vaccinating their kids, that would be a problem. So I do not believe in general that vaccines cause autism. I think, unfortunately, when a lot of parents will be like, I'm not giving my kids any vaccines, but they give them McDonald's and cheeseburgers and Doritos and hot Cheetos and leave them in front of a TV for hours on end. And you can't really have it both ways. I think if you're really concerned about vaccines, be very concerned, be even more concerned about what your child is eating and how much screen time they're getting. Because I would argue that one day the studies will show that there's a very strong connection to a lot of childhood issues around just the standard American diet and lifestyle.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to Dr. Porterfield, would you say that all vaccines are not created equal? Dr. Walsh?
I wouldn't say that at all. I think, again, you have to be very careful. I think as Dr. Woods just said, I mean, there are vaccines that if you didn't want your child to get it, it probably in and of themselves wouldn't cause your child any harm. So, as a parent, you can go through and think about it and look at it. I know it's going to become more and more difficult to not vaccinate your children and send them to school and stuff. That is happening across the country. But again, I'm not I think it's unfortunate that there's so much attention against vaccines in a country where people feed children food that has no nutritional value, and sit them in front of televisions, have them listen to loud music, don't make sure that they get that kind of exercise they need to get, but then they don't want to vaccinate their child. So I would leave it at that. If there are much higher priority things that parents should focus on, if your kid is eating cheese and Happy Meals and stuff, that probably would be the place where you actually could make a huge difference in the long-term health of your child. And if you vaccinated your children are going to be fine. That's the reality, because the children in America who don't get vaccinated aren't poor children. They're rich children. They're children from the suburbs whose parents have read a lot of stuff and then decided they don't want to get their kids vaccinated. So in general, vaccines are incredibly safe. That we know for a fact. And so I would argue that it's really important to make sure that you do all the other lifestyle things, more so than fighting vaccines. You can get informed about vaccines, make the decisions, but make sure the other things are taken care of.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Porterfield, have you had the privilege to deal with a mom or dad that has a child that experienced autism, and what were the challenges that you experienced?
I don't work with children with autism. I have seen studies, however, that talk about low vitamin D and how that can exacerbate autistic symptoms. I've read studies about milk. There's some type of protein in milk. So I would probably advise them to try to reduce the dairy products, check on the vitamin D levels. There's different support groups out there. There are different resources for parents dealing with children with autism, because that's a very difficult situation to have to deal with, especially when they're on the more severe end of the spectrum. So I would suggest to them that they find out the resources that are out there, institutes that can provide groups that can provide various other resources to help them, and do a lot of praying and asking the Lord to give them wisdom as to how to handle their autistic child. That is not a very enviable position to be in at all, but God can give us all that we need to deal with that kind of situation.
Thank you. Dr. Paul.
Yes,
I would like to say something,
Yes.
if you don't.
Yes.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. That's okay.
You sure?
That's okay.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
I don't want to, yeah, keep going. Yes.
All right. Dr. Naples, had you had the privilege of a patient that's autistic in your dentistry?
Yes, I have seen a few of those young patients, and I think that the biggest thing with those patients is or with any patient for that matter is management, you know, and understanding and trying to work with the parents and the child together. You know, these things you must have a personal connection with all the patients. So whether the patient is autistic or a normal patient, in my experience, what I do is I try to make some form of connection with the parent and the patient, and yeah. So what the other thing is, how should the parent take care of the child's teeth?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the parent should treat that child just like a small child, less than 10 years old. You know, work with the child, help the child brush and keep the teeth cleaned, ensure that the child is not taking too much of that toothpaste in, you know, because that's bad. And having a good diet, that's very important.
Yes. Thank you. I think we have heard the same sentiment from all the doctors this evening. Dr. Woods, first to you and then to all the panelists. Is it safe to reopen school, in your opinion?
Can you repeat the question? Part of it cut off for me, sorry.
Is it safe to reopen school?
Oh, okay, all right, very good. So actually last week, the CDC released some guidelines, or it may have been before last week, but I was made aware of it last week, regarding when it's safe to reopen schools, daycares, camps. And they outline a lot of parameters, including being able to maintain social distancing, being able to make sure that the children are wearing masks at all times, being able to clean and sanitize the classrooms and the areas where the children, the common areas where the children will be there, limiting class sizes, meaning that you don't have large classes, small class sizes, 10 or so, because of the social distancing. And so they outline a lot of parameters before, even with a kind of an algorithm of when it's safe to open some of these places. And at this point, it doesn't seem like it is safe to open a lot of those schools, because you're not able to do a lot of those things, especially small class sizes. A lot of schools want to have small class sizes, but they can't even do that. So at this point, it's not until maybe the danger of coronavirus goes down, but there's that risk when school is ready to be opened in August, that there might be another spike in coronavirus August, September, October, as you go into the cold and flu season, which is a natural time for everybody to get sick. And so we're going to have to really be cautious in August when we start opening schools, to see where the disease prevalence is for coronavirus, and if it is a good idea to open the schools again, or just to continue some sort of online schooling system for our children.
Thank you. Dr. Nepal?
How do I feel about reopening of schools in the fall?
Yeah, currently.
Well, it is a fall virus, it's spring and fall. So for me, I don't feel that it's a safe thing to do because of the, not everybody takes the right precautions, and I think it's unsafe. I feel unsafe. I would feel unsafe in the fall.
Yes. Okay. Dr. Walsh, thank you.
This is a tough question, because I think everyone has to realize that there is a price to even to the lockdown and the social distancing. We know, and someone referred to it earlier, going back to the Great Depression, the Spanish flu, and all of the times when we've had massive economic decline, as unemployment goes up, there's almost what I would say is like a dose dependent response of addiction. And in our case nowadays, it would be opioid overdose and suicide. So as we lock down, and more people, 3.2 million people filed for unemployment last week, more. I mean, America is, all of the gains of employment since Obama took office have all been wiped out plus. So all of that also causes health problems. There's something called the social determinants of health. So unemployment and education, or employment and education, are two of those things. On the one side, if you open up schools, there's a risk that the virus might spread. But on the other side, if you don't open up schools soon, the mental health issues that children are going to get, the fact that children who are disadvantaged, poor children, even poor white children out in rural school districts that aren't good school districts, inner city kids, black and brown kids particularly, they're gonna have a gap. They're gonna fall behind. Wealthier, more able parents are gonna keep their kids up. Other kids are gonna fall behind, and this is long term gonna cause major public health problems, in my opinion, knowing what the social determinants of health and how important they are. So I think the country needs to be really quickly figuring out how to get schools back open, for the sake of the low income minority students, rural students who really need school. There are children who the only really good meals they get all week, if you can consider those good meals, are at school. And so we have to begin to think about how we're going to get the schools back open. The CDC put out some things. I would agree with Dr. Woods 100%. What they said is going to be almost impossible for a lot of schools, especially inner city schools with 30, 40 kids to a class. How are they going to shrink it down to 10 kids a class? It would almost be impossible unless the federal government really pushed some money into those schools. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but it is top priority to get people back to work and get people back and get kids back to school, because all of those things also have damage. And let me say this, we know enough about the virus now that if a teacher has certain comorbidities, you might want to either keep those teachers out of the classroom. You might, the nursing homes almost need to remain on lockdown probably until there's a vaccine. There are things that we could do to protect the most vulnerable people. Because again, some argue anywhere from 92 to 98% of people who get this virus are going to recover. Obviously, you don't want anyone to die, but we know enough now that we can begin to put things in place to protect the most vulnerable people. And again, if this was supposed to go on another 6 months, you'd have no economy, and people would be dying from things other than the virus, because of the unemployment, closed schools, homelessness, relationship problems, depression, addiction. A lot of other things are going to begin to happen. That's why it is a bit, to me, it's a bit important. It's not a bit, it's very important. We begin to relax things safely and begin to move the society back. I don't think you open schools this year. It's already May. I don't think there's a point, but I think you begin to plan for the fall. And how are you going to open up schools in the fall safely so kids don't continue to miss all that school?
Yes, Doc, and we went over that in the fall there will be even stronger strain of the virus.
I don't know that, and I don't know how everybody keeps saying it. I tell you one thing that worries me about this virus is there's just a lot of doom and gloom.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of anecdotal stuff. Obviously, this is a dangerous virus. Obviously, it is unfortunately taking lives that need not be taken. If there was a way that we could have kept people from getting the virus, but there's not enough about all the people who are getting over it, and the fact that the majority of people who get it actually are going to be fine. So there's not enough of that information to try and help people not have the mental health trauma. I know 25-year-olds with no medical problems at all that are scared to death of this and won't and quit their jobs, won't work, won't do anything, and locked up in their house. So there's a balance that we've missed, I think, and there's a constant order. It's going to be a resurgence. It's going to be worse because right now, as bad as it is, it's nowhere near what they were telling us initially. I mean, they were talking about case fatality rates of 5%. This thing in the final analysis is going to have a case fatality rate literally probably under 0.5%. I mean, it's going to be a fraction of what they first said. And that's as we test more, the death rates aren't going to increase, but the positives are going to increase. And that case fatality rate is going to continue to go down. So I want people to understand this is a horrible thing. If you specifically are one of the people who have under comorbid conditions that cause you to be at high risk, you do need to be incredibly cautious. But most people need to understand that their biggest, if they get it, the biggest risk they have is giving it to someone with a comorbid condition, and understanding how to protect those people is really the way that our society has to go. So they're going to have to, in my opinion, you have to start opening up the schools in the fall. You just have to figure it out.
Okay. Dr. Porterfield?
You know, I think we're really getting to the point where human beings don't have answers. There's just so much that we can do. I think we need to move forward. I kind of agree with Dr. Walsh's assessment that we need to move forward as best as we can, but I think that either way we go, there are going to be some negative consequences. We just have to determine and weigh which one are going to be worse, what's the benefits and costs of each decision. But I also believe as time goes on, this is just a foretaste of the things that we're going to encounter where either way we go, there's going to be bad. And as we come to the end of the world and time closes, I just think this is just a eye opener into what we're facing as human beings that only divine wisdom can help us through. But again, my bottom line is I think we need to see what we could do to get the economy back, because some of the consequences of continuing to lock down may end up being worse than just seeing how we could gradually get back to some sense of normalcy. That's my thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. Well, we are just about near wrapping up. I want to do ask a few more questions and as brief as you can answer, and then we take closing thoughts from each of you to our viewers and our listeners as to how, as it pertains to healthcare, spirituality, and dealing with this COVID situation. Someone said that one of their colleagues, their child, a 16-year-old son, got vaccinated for school and he developed autism. What do you share with a patient, a parent, dealing with this situation, either Dr. Woods or Dr. Walsh, considering that he did not have it before and the vaccine resulted in autism, 16 years old?
Right. So just so I understand completely, so the child got the vaccine at 16 years old and developed autism at 16, or he had it before that?
He got the vaccine at 16 and developed autism after the vaccine. That's what I'm understanding from what they played.
What vaccine would he be getting at 16?
Meningitis vaccine is what we give at 16. Yeah, so that's very interesting. I must say I haven't heard of that happening where a 16-year-old got vaccinated. That's the 16-year-old vaccine is a meningitis booster. So you in fact should have got one at 11 and then you get the booster at 16. If that's what they're saying. It's hard to say if he had other vaccines previously, but I haven't heard of a case where an older child like that got autism from a vaccine at the age of 16. We generally try to diagnose autism before the age of 3. You're able to diagnose it before the age of 3. So I'm not sure why, if he was tested and evaluated for autism previously, if that was the case. But I would definitely need more information about this patient to really make to give an educated answer, because I'm not sure we have all the included pieces. But I do see many patients who they get the vaccines at a year, between 1 and 4 years, and they tell me there's been changes in their child and whatnot. One of the things we've always said as far as vaccines and autism is we start vaccine as newborns, but the MMR vaccine, which is the one you get at a year, before that, the child is not really talking. They're not making a lot of developmental progress. So that once you turn 1, that is when you start talking and you start walking and you start making a lot of developmental milestones. And so sometimes there is that inadvertent link with the vaccine, and that the child wasn't doing much before the vaccine, and after the vaccine they may not be doing much either. And so a lot of times people say, oh, well, it was a vaccine, that's why they're not developing now. But that is a natural stage of progression for autism, is that you almost always develop normally until the age of 1, because you're not doing anything but rolling over and smiling and things like that. And then after the age of 1, when you should be smiling and running and hugging people and interacting more, you're not doing it because you are autistic. You happen to get vaccines at the same time. So I feel like there is that inadvertently, just because of the developmental milestones. So parents have to be aware of that as well.
The reason I asked about what a vaccine would they get, because at 16, a lot of kids, even the meningitis, and she knows better than me. Dr. Woods is a pediatrician, but a lot of times they get it when they're about to head off to college. So 16, they're usually meningitis. I don't know that I've ever even heard anybody try to make a correlation with that and autism. Maybe people do. I don't know. But what I would say is I had patients who if their first child got the MMR as scheduled, and the parents said, listen, this thing caused my child to have autism. And so they had two more children, didn't vaccinate either one of the children, not one vaccine. And both of those children also had autism. So is it the vaccine or is it something else? It's a very funny thing. And so, you know, I don't think the science supports that the MMR is a cause of autism, but again, anecdotally, and for all the reasons Dr. Wood just said, it could very much seem like that's what happened.
Okay, all right. Well, what I will do at this time, we'll go around the panel and we'll have some closing thoughts from each of the doctors. And I'll start with Dr. Porterfield, and we'll come around. Dr. Porterfield, closing thoughts, please.
Well, we're dealing with a crisis and situation that the majority of us, all of us in our lifetime, has not been faced with. This is something that has come on us suddenly. There's so much unknowns about it. And I really believe that this is just going to be the beginning of many more situations like this, that I said earlier, that man has no answers to. Doesn't mean that we sit around helpless. We do what we can. But I believe that this is a time when God's truth is going to shine forth. The gospel will shine forth. His message of health is going to shine forth. And those of us who know these things can share, whether we're in mental health, whether we're in physical health. And so I am encouraging my patients to look at the fact that there is hope. There is hope. We need to be instilling hope for people in a time of hopelessness, encouraging people not to stay discouraged or despondent, letting them realize that there's a power and a being outside of themselves that can help them with this uncontrollable, unforeseeable situation. And so I want to encourage us to have that hope and share it with others. And I want to share with all listening to recognize that there are things we can do to instill hope in ourselves and in others. So that's what I want to leave with people.
Thank you. Good. Dr. Woods?
Thank you. So I just want to mention 2 things. We talked a lot about plant-based diet and other health things, but we didn't mention hydrotherapy. So that's something I want to just briefly touch on as people are getting ill or know people who are getting ill. Please don't forget the benefits of hydrotherapy. That is the cold and hot water immersion. You can look up how to do it best for your illnesses, but that's a very helpful tool when dealing with illnesses. And finally, I just want to continue what was previously mentioned, that now is a time where people are more willing to accept information about the Lord and about his soon return. And so I think that those of us who are wise need to be diligent in spreading the gospel truth, spreading the benefits of our health message that we know to be true, And so look for the positive things. People are staying at home, they're stuck at home with their families and what have you. Look for the positive things in each situation and definitely point them to the maker of all hope, to the Lord, so that he can encourage them and they can even use this time to build a relationship with him.
Amen. Thank you. Dr. Nepal.
Yes, I would like to say that the diet is very, very important for our health. And there's some people who would say that they don't have enough time to eat healthy. But if we can, if we are unable to eat healthy, then my advice would be don't eat at all. I would tell people it's better not to eat than to eat bad foods, because your body is the temple of God, and the body has the power to go without food. That's it. That's what I got to say.
Thank you, Doc. Just before Dr. Wise comes, once again, I want to let you know on behalf of Atlanta Pillars of Faith, Seventh-day Adventist Church, our pastor, Ricky Holmes, the elders board, church board, and our members, we want to thank you once more for taking time out of your busy schedule. I do hope that our viewers and our listeners was able to glean something from this discussion. There was a wealth of information that was shared. The link will be available. Please, a lot of things that's practical that can help you obtain optimum health. Share with your friends and family. It can make a difference in your life. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Dr. Walsh, you'll have the last word and you close with us, close out for prayer with us, please.
I just want to say, I know we had a lot of questions about vaccines and about masks. A lot of what I really was hoping we'd focus a bit more on the prophetic meaning of what we're going through right now. And I want to thank Dr. Porterfield, because she kept bringing that back up as we were having this discussion. But I want people to understand that this is not a time for stress and fear and panic, because the God of the universe is in control. And I said this in the sermon this morning, when Jesus was walking to his disciples on the water, they were afraid. They thought they were seeing a spirit, the scripture says, a duppy. And what the scripture says is that Jesus calls out to them and he says, "Be of good cheer. It is I, be not afraid." Ellen White uses that text to tell us that when the storms of the last days begin to rise up, the earthquake we just saw in Nevada this week, and in the Caribbean, we've had multiple earthquakes in the Caribbean in the last few months, in Serbia, in West Texas, in diverse places. When we see the pestilence like the coronavirus, and there are many others on the road, Ebola and others that we downplay because they don't reach America the same way as they do other parts of the world. When we see pestilence and the threat now that we're going to have mass starvation in the world because the food supply chain has been broken due to the coronavirus shutdown. And of course, the constant threat of wars and rumors of wars. Jesus says in Matthew 24 and verse 8, this is the beginning of sorrows. Later in the chapter, he says, but he that endures to the end, the same shall be saved. And let me say this. I know that our government is strong and powerful. This pandemic has peeled back the veil to show you that you cannot put your trust in man. Man will fail you. All of our best efforts will fail you. We must trust God, and you need to be at peace because, as Jesus said to disciples, be of good cheer. What we're seeing happening is the sign that our Father is coming to get us, and that should put us at peace. I quoted this in the sermon this morning. I want to read it again. Take my yoke upon you, Jesus says, and he says to learn of me. He says, and ye shall find rest for your souls. Then Jesus says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. I want to challenge you during these difficult times to learn of Christ, because when you learn of him and you learn to put your trust in him, the burdens are lifted. And the old hymn, I quoted it this morning, burdens are lifted at Calvary. They're lifted there. And I know we're going through some hard times, but from the prophetic sense, this is a trying time, a warning for the church of the living God. If you can't make it now, If your Christianity falters in this time, if you can't keep up, as the Old Testament prophet says, with the footmen, how are you going to run with the horses? The time of the horses is coming, but if you're in Christ Jesus, you have nothing to fear. He will take care of you. And I want to leave you with that word of encouragement that God is still on his throne and he is in control. And let's close out with prayer. Father God, we thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to study your word, to have this discussion about medical things. There are many opinions, Lord. And there are some who are very strongly opinionated about many things. Lord, I pray that ultimately, though, we're very strongly opinionated in who Christ is and in his power and the power of his blood and in the fact that he is about to return to redeem his own from this wicked world. So, Father God, I pray that this pandemic would remind us that he is coming and that we can remember his words to his disciples, that we should be of good cheer. For it is I, be not afraid. Bless your people, Lord, to not be a people of fear. For you've not given us a spirit of fear, Lord, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And let us take that promise with us as we go into these last days. This is our prayer in Jesus' precious and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you once more to all our panelists. May God continue to richly bless you in your varied practices. Thank you to our viewers and our listeners. Bye for now.